I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
Hey, what's good, my homies? Hope you're doing well, feeling blessed, having a good day, having a good week. This one's going to be UFC 320, a phenomenal card. We've got 14 fights to break down, so the breakdown might be an hour or just over an hour, or maybe just under an hour. Now, before we get into the breakdown, I'll show you my bets from last weekend. You can pause the video if you want to see these bets. And for anyone who wants to know who I'm personally putting money on for this pay-per-view, the only way to do that is to get yourself a Money City membership over on the Patreon and join my Discord. And the Money City membership is super cheap. It's super cheap, so that's good. All right, guys, let's go. First matchup on the card, we've got Veronica Hardy taking on Brogan the Bear Walker, taking place in the women's flyweight division. Let's start the breakdown of the UFC fighter that has a big experience advantage. Let's start with Veronica Hardy. Veronica is now 4 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. She joined the UFC back in 2016, so basically a decade now at the highest level of mixed martial arts. And she did lose her first 3 fights in the UFC, but the UFC kept her around. And in all fairness, those first 3 fights were very difficult. In her debut, she was actually the youngest female fighter on the roster at the time, only 20 years old, going into a fight at bantamweight, very undersized. And that debut came against Ashley Evans-Smith. Then she fought against Andrea KGB Lee, who completely outclassed Veronica Hardy. So what did we learn from those first 2 fights? We learned a few things. We learned that the physicality on the side of Veronica is very weak. Ashley Evans-Smith got 2 out of 5 takedowns, and she also found a good amount of success in the clinch against the fence. Eventually, that size and weight advantage that Ashley Evans-Smith had was too much for Veronica. The fight ended with a brutal ground and pound stoppage late in the fight. Andrea Lee got 3 out of 5 takedowns. Again, the physicality difference showed in the fight. Veronica was bullied in the clinch. She was bullied on the ground. She was bullied in the physicality department. But on a more positive note, we learned that Veronica has really nice taekwondo kicks. She's so fast and flexible, and those kicks can be fired at rapid speed upstairs to the opponent's skull. The kicking game of Veronica is good to go. So after losing to Smith and Lee, Veronica lost to jiu-jitsu specialist Jillian Robertson, and again, Veronica can't stay on the feet. Jillian gets a round 1 submission. There was some nice striking moments by Veronica in the first round, but her main weakness was the reason she loses. Fast forward to Veronica's most recent fight, and again, it's kind of the same story. She gets taken down near the end of round 1. She spends the whole of round 2 on the ground. And it's, again, the same story. Eduardo Mora, too strong, too physical. But yeah, I'd say the skill set of Veronica hasn't really changed too much over the years. She's a southpaw taekwondo striker that has very fast kicks and excellent footwork, but all that moving around kind of slows her down past the first round. Now on the flip side, Brogan the Bear Walker currently 0-2 inside the UFC. She hasn't fought in over 2 years. She's now 36 years old, and her UFC performances so far have been very disappointing. In her debut, she was a plus 100 pick'em against Juliana Miller, and she got ragdolled in that fight, taken down 4 out of 4 times. She couldn't defend a single takedown in that fight, and once Brogan Walker got brought to the ground, she looked so weak off her back. And eventually she got stopped with brutal ground and pound, similar to Veronica Hardy in her debut. Then she lost to Yasmin Lucindo, which was a very dominant win for Lucindo. Brogan lost every single second of that fight. She was outclassed everywhere in that fight. Her striking looked outrageously bad, diabolically bad. And again, her takedown defense, it was abysmal. It was that of a newborn baby giraffe. So what are the major differences between Veronica Hardy and Brogan Walker? Well, Veronica Hardy has 15 professional fights. This will be her 16th professional fight. Whereas Brogan Walker, she only has 11 professional fights. Veronica has pretty good taekwondo striking skills, whereas Brogan Walker, like I said, her striking is very bad. So not only is there an experience difference, but also a significant difference in the striking ability. The only way Brogan Walker can really win this fight is by doing exactly what prior Veronica Hardy opponents have done, and that's impose the physicality onto Veronica, push her against the fence, keep her against the fence, and ultimately bring her to the ground. Just impose your physicality onto Veronica, as most people have. But guys, that's very unlikely to be the main story of this fight. Like I said earlier, Brogan hasn't fought in over 2 years. So not only do we have an inexperienced Brogan Walker, but we also have an inactive Brogan Walker. And when you put together inactivity and inexperience, That's a double red flag right there. So there's more red flags on the side of Brogan Walker. There's more green flags on the side of Veronica Hardy. So if the matchup stays on the feet, which it probably will for the most part, expect the footwork, expect the speed and the kicks of Veronica to be the main reason why she gets her hand raised this weekend. The prediction has to be Veronica Hardy. Next matchup, we've got Ramiz Brahimaj taking on Austin the Gentleman Vanderford, taking place in the welterweight division. The old classic mirror matchup. These fighters are very similar. They're both wrestlers, they're both grapplers, they both have similar game plans. Let's start the breakdown with the fighter that has more UFC experience. Starting with Ramiz Brahimaj, who's currently 4 wins, 3 losses. Looking to extend his win streak is Ramiz Brahimaj. He's won 2 fights in a row as an underdog, and we're going to speak about that in a minute. But first, let's take a look at the earlier performances of Ramiz Brahimaj. Ramiz got to the UFC back in 2020, around the time the UFC started to host Apex events. And that debut of Ramiz was one to remember, but for all the wrong reasons. Who remembers that fight against Max Griffin? Guys, for anyone that hasn't seen that fight, I would advise not watching it. Don't watch that fight. Ramiz Brahimaj had a horrendous injury in that fight where his ear was essentially hanging off. His ear got scraped against the cage fence, and unfortunately, that scraping of the ear nearly tore his ear off. A very unfortunate situation, and I don't recall ever seeing an injury quite like that. Hopefully the first and last time we ever see a fighter's ear hanging off from their skull. Now, Ramiz Brahimaj returned to the octagon against Sasha Palatnikov, and this was a very winnable matchup, and Ramiz made it seem exactly that. He dominated this fight. Sasha Palatnikov had no answer for the early takedown of Ramiz Brahimaj. He did instantly get back to the feet once he was taken down, but Ramiz just returned him. He just returned him straight to the mat. Ramiz showcased his skill set beautifully in this fight. It was the wrestling, it was the grappling. He showcased that in round 1. The fight was over pretty quickly. Ramiz got a rear naked choke. However, after this win, he would go back to losing. And this time against veteran fighter Court McGee. And what really surprised me in that fight was, despite Ramiz being a -125 favourite, he got out-wrestled. He was completely outclassed by the veteran. He even got knocked down near the end of round 1. He got taken down, wrestled to the canvas 5 out of 11 times by Court McGee. He was outboxed on the feet. He was just dominated by the OG. So guys, 3 fights into the UFC career of Ramiz, he's lost against both veterans, Max Griffin and Court McGee. He then wins his 4th fight against Michael Gilmore, and it's the same type of win he got against Sasha Palatnikov. Ramiz gets a very early takedown, gets the back of Michael Gilmore, and it's a rear naked choke win. So 4 fights into his career, we're starting to see a trend. The fights he lost, the veterans knew exactly what to do when it came to defensive wrestling. They made Ramiz look like a rookie. But in the wins of Ramiz Brahimaj, he destroys the opponent, and it's usually against a rookie. Now, at this point in the career of Ramiz, he's actually taken a few years away from the octagon because he's got a horrible spinal injury. And anytime a fighter spends a few years away because they've got a spinal injury, that's a massive red flag. I don't need to say that. You guys know that. And in his return fight to the octagon, Ramiz got destroyed by, at the time, newly signed UFC fighter Themba Gorimbo. Now in this fight, Ramiz performed very badly. He went 1 out of 8 on his takedowns and actually got taken down 5 out of 6 times. So this was the first time in his UFC career where he was outclassed by an opponent that wasn't a UFC veteran. And at this point, you're kind of thinking the career of Ramiz Brahimaj, it might be over. But guys, here's where the underdog story begins for Ramiz Brahimaj. Ramiz goes into his next fight against Mickey Gall as a slight underdog, and he's fighting for his job. If he loses this fight, he goes 2-4 inside the octagon. It's a massive pay-per-view. The pressure's on. What does Ramiz do? He obliterates Mickey Gall in round 1. But this time, it's not with the wrestling. He's not looking for takedowns into rear naked chokes. This time, he smacks Mickey Gall with a nasty right hook that instantly sends him to another galaxy, instantly stops the fight. And the underdog story continues into his most recent fight. This time, Ramiz Brahimaj, a +300 underdog against Billy Ray Goff. And Billy Ray Goff, man, he did have the advantage on the feet. But for some reason, he tries to take down Ramiz, and Ramiz just locks up a free guillotine choke. There's a massive upset win in round 1 for Ramiz as a +300 underdog. So what have we learned from the first 7 UFC fights of Ramiz? He's primarily a wrestler and grappler. All 4 of his wins are round 1 stoppages. We've also learned that against veterans, he doesn't perform well. His striking defense is not the best. His striking offense is a little predictable. He's not a bad fighter, but against experienced fighters, they make him seem like a bad fighter. But right now, he's on a win streak. The first win streak of his UFC career. The first time he's put together back-to-back wins. But the question now, can he go back-to-back-to-back? That's the question. If Austin Vanderford has anything to say about it, the answer is going to be no. And Austin Vanderford, he's not a rookie. He does have good experience. Look at the UFC debut of Austin Vanderford. He went into a fight with Nikolay Veretennikov as a -120, and he completely dominated that fight. The takedowns were extremely easy for Austin Vanderford. I also noticed the speed of the takedown entry was really, really good. Once he got Nikolay to the ground, it was complete destruction. Nikolay Veretennikov was unable to build back to the feet, just stuck under Vanderford, and the ground and pound from Vanderford was so nice. The way he's landing punches, working the body, even going stack guard to land heavier punches, then advancing position from guard to more dominant positions, searching for a submission to stop the fight. So the groundwork of Austin Vanderford was highly effective, highly impressive, and then he found a ground and pound finish in the second round. So guys, what do we expect from a matchup between Ramiz Brahimaj and Austin Vanderford? Well, Ramiz Brahimaj does have more UFC experience, but as I mentioned earlier, typically against fighters that have good experience or good wrestling, he doesn't do well. Now, Austin doesn't have more UFC experience, but he does have good MMA experience, and his wrestling is extremely good too. So it's not an easy matchup for Ramiz. I don't expect him to flatline Vanderford in round one the way he's flatlined prior opponents. I also expect Vanderford to have better wrestling in this fight. Ramiz is a good wrestler. Don't get me wrong, he is a good wrestler, but there's levels to wrestling. I haven't seen Ramiz successfully wrestle against anyone that has quality wrestling. And Vanderford does have very good wrestling. I also think Austin Vanderford is a little faster, a little sharper on the feet. He's also got the faster wrestling entries, the more high-level wrestling entries. We haven't seen the fighters face off yet, but I'm guessing there's a slight advantage. There's a slight size advantage on the side of Austin Vanderford. But yeah, I think Austin Vanderford is typically the fighter that Ramiz Brahimaj loses against. He's not got weak wrestling like Sasha Palatnikov and Michael Gilmore. He's not got a glass chin like Mickey Gall, and he's not a walking punch bag with zero IQ like Billy Ray Goff. Now, like I said, Ramiz Brahimaj does have good offensive wrestling, but as I've pointed out in the breakdown, he's been taken down multiple times in his UFC career. He was taken down 5 times by Court McGee, taken down 5 times by Themba Gorimbo. So my prediction is going to be Austin Vanderford shows he's a better wrestler, a better ground fighter, a better grappler, and I think he's going to stop Ramiz on the ground. I think he stops Ramiz. That's the pick. Next matchup, we've got Punahele Soriano taking on Nikolay Veretennikov, taking place in the welterweight division. And we're going to start the breakdown with Punahele Soriano. Puna has always been a big hitter. He's always had a ton of power, and that stopping power was on display very quickly in his last fight against Uros Medic. He caught Medic within 30 seconds of round 1, and that knockdown happened because Medic, he was trying to back away with his hands down. And that's something you can't do against Puna, especially early in a fight. You don't want your hands down against Puna. In his fight against Miguel Baeza, he went full Nurmagomedov mode. Puna Soriano put on a wrestling masterclass. He's not only a big puncher, he's able to wrestle his way to victory, which does show us that Punahele Soriano isn't a one-dimensional fighter. I also picked against Puna when he fought against Roman Kopylov a few years ago. I took Roman Kopylov as a slight underdog, and this was when most people didn't really understand how good Roman Kopylov was. And the main reason why I picked against Puna is because Roman Kopylov is so direct with his punches. He's so good with his straight punches, whereas Punahele Soriano, he goes wide. He goes very wide with the punches. But guys, overall, I think Punahele Soriano, his UFC career has been pretty good. Sometimes he does slow down in a fight. Sometimes he gets outclassed when it comes to technique. Now, on the flip side, we've got Nikolay Veretennikov, who's 1 win, 2 losses inside the UFC. He got outclassed by Danny Barlow in his debut, which isn't exactly a bad loss. But the loss to Austin Vanderford, like we just spoke about, was so bad. It was just pure dusteration. He got destroyed from the first second to the final second. Then against Francisco Prado, he gets his first win. And the performance was kind of good. It was kind of good. It was the bodywork of Nikolay Veretennikov, the way he would land those knees to the body of Francisco Prado. That's really why he won the fight. But guys, despite Veretennikov having a quality start in round 1, he started to really slow down in the second round, which isn't exactly a bad thing because most people slow down in a fight. But I think his decision making as he slows down was really the poorest thing in his performance. He would constantly keep spinning. He was spinning so much and he was slowing down. Now, when you slow down and become tired in a fight, the last thing you want to do is spin. You don't want to be spinning when you're tired. And he was constantly spinning and he was actually getting taken down because of that. And even though he was getting taken down from the spinning attacks, he would continue to still spin. And it was like, bro, you have to stop spinning. So at the end of round 1 against Francisco Prado, it was actually 1-1 on one judge's scorecard. And the other 2 judges had 2-0 Veretennikov. But that could have easily been 1-1 on 2 judges' scorecards. Or even 1-1 on all 3. So Veretennikov, in my opinion, needs to make better decisions when he slows down. Don't be spinning because your takedown defense is already bad. When you spin and the opponent takes the back, it's a wrap. You're going to the mat. So how does the fight play out between Punahele Soriano and Veretennikov? Well, Punahele Soriano's younger. Puna has more UFC experience and he's also going to be throwing massive hooks, massive overhands. The only way I can really see Veretennikov winning against Puna is landing a nasty teep kick to the liver that completely shuts down Puna, or just timing Puna with a beautifully timed counterpunch, which is kind of possible because Puna can be over-aggressive. Puna can be so urgent to be in the fight that defensively is not the best. But guys, are we going to pick against Puna because he slows down? Are we going to pick against Puna because he can be over-aggressive? We're not picking against Puna. Not when it comes to Nikolay Veretennikov. So the prediction has to be Punahele Soriano to find a round 2 KO TKO, potentially round 3, could even be round 1. I just think Nikolay Veretennikov is very poor when it comes to defensive wrestling. His takedown defense is just not that good. And Punahele Soriano, like I've mentioned in the breakdown, he can wrestle. He can put on those wrestling performances. He's not just a big puncher. The big punching on the feet makes him very dangerous to be on the feet against. But he can also bring you to the ground and smash you on the ground. So my prediction has to be Punahele Soriano. Next matchup, we've got Patchy No Love Mix taking on Jakub Masa Wiklacz, taking place in the bantamweight division. So let's start the breakdown with the veteran fighter that is Patchy Mix. He's currently 0-1 in the UFC after a shockingly bad UFC debut. But he did fight against Mario Batista, who's one of the best bantamweights on the roster. So many people hate on Mario Batista, so they put money on Patchy Mix, expecting Patchy to win that fight. Now so many people hate Patchy Mix because of how bad he performed in that fight. Both Patchy Mix and Mario Batista are 2 of the best bantamweight fighters in the UFC and on the planet. The facts are the facts. Those 2 are easily 2 of the best bantamweights in the sport. And recency bias is a massive thing in the sport of mixed martial arts. So many people have the mindset you're only as good as your last fight, which certainly isn't the case. You can't win them all. But guys, speaking about that debut of Patchy Mix, he was so stationary, like a statue, very stiff, like an ironing board. His head movement was non-existent and his offensive boxing was very slow. There was no real danger in that fight when Patchy Mix let his hands go, and he never got into a dominant grappling position against Mario. So it's not like just one thing was bad about the UFC debut. It's almost like nothing was good about that UFC debut. So I can understand the frustration people have towards Patchy Mix watching that UFC debut, especially those that put money on Patchy Mix. But you also have to think, Mario Batista, he's one of the best. Did he make him look that bad? Was Mario Batista's performance part of Patchy's bad performance? Now guys, I want to say, despite that shocking debut that Patchy Mix had, he's still one of the best bantamweights in the sport. His grappling is super high level. His kicks are pretty effective. The calf kicks, the body kicks, the head kicks. I think his boxing's pretty weak though. I wouldn't describe him as a puncher. I would describe him more as a high-level jiu-jitsu player that likes to kick the opponent. And with all the experience Patchy Mix has, you'd certainly expect a much better performance this time round. Now the opponent, Jakub Wiklacz, is making his UFC debut, and I have to be honest, watching the tape on Jakub, I'm not super impressed. He's kind of similar to Patchy Mix in a way. He likes to spam body kicks. His boxing isn't that good. He's primarily a grappler. Most of his wins are submission wins. He's never gotten a win via KO TKO. The whole time I was watching tape on Jakub though, I just kept saying to myself, there's no way this guy wins against Patchy. There's no way. I think stylistically, the matchup is going to favour the veteran bantamweight, the former champion. Jakub isn't some elite striker, so I can't see him landing at will the same way Mario did. If anything, both of these fighters are going to throw kicks. Both of these fighters are going to spam kicks and look to really dominate the kicking area of this fight. Now, if the matchup goes to the mat, it's tough to say who's going to be the one that initiates the takedown, but I will say this. If Jakub shoots first, I could see Patchy Mix locking up a guillotine choke. I could definitely see Patchy Mix finishing this fight with a submission. If Jakub thinks he's going to ragdoll Patchy to the mat and just dominate that fight in the grappling, I think he's going to be shocked. But I think this matchup is essentially veteran versus rookie. What Patchy Mix has achieved in his career, only most people can dream of. I do kind of wonder how determined is Patchy still at the highest level? Because once you've achieved that much, you've become champion, you've made a lot of money, is the hunger and determination still there for Patchy Mix? If you're only turning up for a paycheck, more often than not, it's going to show in the performance. And paycheck performances kind of look like Patchy in his debut. So I guess this weekend, we're going to truly see where Patchy Mix is at, because he's not in there with a proven UFC bantamweight. He's not in there with someone as sharp as Mario Batista. He's in there with a rookie. So guys, if Patchy Mix was to lose this fight, then he's truly here just for paychecks. But guys, I don't think he is. I don't think he is, man. Like I said, I think he's one of the best bantamweights in the sport. I think he submits Jakub Wiklacz. The prediction has to be the veteran, the former champion, Patchy Mix. Next matchup, we've got Macy, female MGK, Chiasson taking on Yana, Foxy, Santos, taking place in the female bantamweight division. So this matchup here is a pretty decent matchup. Both of these fighters have previously competed at 145. So expect a physical matchup, expect a physical contest. Both ladies looking to impose their strength in the clinch or looking for takedowns, looking to dominate the fight on the ground. And guys, by the way, I've got an amazing track record at predicting Macy Chiasson matchups. I've predicted her last 5 fights correct. I picked her as an underdog, a plus 200 underdog against Norma Dumont. She won that fight. I picked her at plus 100 against Mara Bueno Silva. She won that fight. I obviously picked her in her rematch against Pani Kianzad. She won that. I picked her in her first fight against Pani in her debut. She won that. I picked against her when she fought Irene Aldana. She lost. And I also picked against her in her last fight against Ketlin Vieira. And Ketlin Vieira was a slight underdog. And I think Macy Chiasson, she's pretty good. She's big. She's physical. She's got a nasty ground game. Super strong grappling. She's a physical powerhouse, is MGK, female MGK. And the main reason why I picked against her in her last fight is the fact that Ketlin Vieira is everything I just described Macy as. She's big, she's physical, she's a decent grappler, she's nasty on the ground. So guys, that was a mirror matchup in a lot of ways. And I just felt that Ketlin Vieira was slightly more dangerous in terms of who's the bigger puncher, who's got more UFC experience, who's that little bit stronger in the clinch and on the ground. And I kind of feel that Yana Santos is very similar to both Macy Chiasson and Ketlin Vieira. Yana Santos is a former 145er that likes to impose her physicality onto the opponent. She likes to wrestle the opponent, and I picked her to win in her last fight as a slight underdog against former champion Miesha Tate. And Yana done very well in that fight. She basically pieced up Miesha Tate on the feet, and anytime Miesha went for takedowns, Yana defended so well. Not only defending the takedowns, but would also land punishing knees to the body of Miesha. And anytime you can be offensive during those defensive moments, the judges love that. The judges love that. Turning defense into offense is a great way to keep the judges on your side in a fight. So guys, if we're making a prediction based on who was more impressive in the last fight, the prediction would be Yana Santos. However, styles make fights. So how does the matchup play out between Yana Santos and Macy Chiasson? Well, they're both very physical. So I expect both fighters to attempt to dominate the clinch, attempt to get takedowns, look to dominate the fight on the ground. But guys, if the fight's 1-1 going into the final round, I kind of favour Macy Chiasson to have a little bit more in the tank. So I do lean towards female MGK. I lean towards Macy Chiasson to get it done. But in a way, it's a mirror matchup because they're both clinch fighters. They're both ground fighters. They're both former 145ers. They both like to wrestle and grapple. So in a way, it's a very similar stylistic matchup. And I think Macy Chiasson literally just lost this type of matchup in her last fight against Ketlin Vieira. But this time round, I do favour Macy Chiasson, female MGK, to win the mirror matchup. The prediction has to be Macy Chiasson but I expect a very close fight. Potentially a split decision with this fight. It's going to be very close. They're very similar. Next matchup, we've got Daniel Wiklacz Santos taking on Joe Sang Yo, or Yu, taking place in the featherweight division. So let's start the breakdown with a fighter that got a nasty, spectacular knockout in his UFC debut. The knockout Joe Sang Yo got against Jakub was insane. It was insane. The way Joe Sang Yo, with the hands down, he's striking with the hands down at his waist, and that's so dangerous. To strike with your hands down, it's so dangerous because typically you're taught to keep your hands up. If you drop your hands, your coach is going to remind you in the gym, lift your hands up, put your hands up. But some fighters like to fight with their hands down. And Joe Sang Yo, or Joe Sang Yu, is one of those strikers. So what's the benefit with your hands down? What's the benefit of throwing punches from the waist? Well, firstly, it's not something you see too often. If you're in the gym and you're sparring in the gym, most of your training partners are going to be throwing more traditional punches. So you get used to anticipating more traditionally thrown punches. But what happens when punches are thrown from the waist? You can't see those punches. Punches thrown from the waist are very difficult to anticipate because you're not seeing them as much as you would with the traditional thrown punches. It's super easy to miss one of those punches. And next thing you know, you're on the ground half asleep or fully asleep, or you've been stunned on the feet. The hands down striking style can be very dangerous for both fighters. The one using that hands down style doesn't have any protection for the chin, so they do need excellent footwork. You also need good eyes to have that hands down style, and you also need to have fast reactions. You need a good ability to slip and roll with the punches. And I see a lot of those qualities with Joe Sang Yo, but those qualities, they do fade over time. I'll give you a good example. Bobby Green. Bobby Green has a hands-down style, but over the last 2 years, we've really seen Bobby Green become way more hittable. He's not moving the feet as well as what he used to. He's not slipping the punches. He's not reacting as fast as what he used to. We're seeing that hands-down style of Bobby Green start to become more of a negative than a positive. But for young fighters like Joe Sang Yo, that hands-down style, you can get away with it. And you can be very dangerous with that style. Guys, just go to UFC Fight Pass and rewatch that Joe Sang Yo KO against Jakub. The UFC shows you that KO in slow motion after the fight. And look at the short left hook. Look at the angle it's thrown from. It's out of sight. It's so short and so fast. By the time that punch lands, Jakub's consciousness is already disconnected. He's fully asleep, falling through the air. A spectacular knockout, it really was. Now the opponent is a very scrappy, tough Brazilian fighter by the name of Daniel Santos. He's currently 3 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. And I would describe Daniel Santos as a much different fighter to Joe Sang Yo. First, we can see the offensive striking ability is completely different. Daniel Santos doesn't look as pretty, he doesn't look as technically gifted, but that's because he's playing a different game, a completely different striking game. Daniel Santos is an aggressive Thai boxer. He wants to get in the face. He wants to let big punches fly, let those Muay Thai kicks go, and then mix in wrestling into grappling. He's not floating around the octagon with his hands down looking for a perfectly timed counterpunch. That's what Joe Sang Yo's trying to do. And when that stuff works, it looks like the best thing since sliced bread. But when it doesn't work, it's because the opponent is eating those counterpunches. It's because the opponent is getting takedowns. It's because the opponent's landing massive kicks to the legs of the opponent. And the opponent's just simply ready to fight. And I think Daniel Santos is one of those fighters that's simply ready to fight. His record doesn't really suggest he's always ready to fight because there's a lot of cancelled matchups. But anytime you get Daniel Santos in the octagon, he's going to bring the chaos. He's going to bring the violence. Defensively, he's not very good though. And that's not just a Daniel Santos problem, it's a Muay Thai striker problem. Most Muay Thai fighters have very little head movement. They aren't taught to entirely avoid the strikes being thrown at them. Instead, the Muay Thai striker's taught to return every strike. If you throw a kick at a Muay Thai striker, they're taught to return that kick. If you throw a punch, they're taught to return that punch. They're not taught to entirely avoid all of the strikes being thrown at them. So I'd say that mindset in Muay Thai does make them very tough. It makes them mentally tough and very tough physically, but they're not good defensively. They're very bad defensively. And you do see that with Daniel Santos. He was dropped in round 1 in his last fight. He was dropped twice in round 1 by Castaneda. There's a fair amount of evidence that shows you Daniel Santos is extremely hittable. And when you put someone like that up against someone that's throwing punches from the waist, it's pretty much a recipe for disaster on the side of Daniel Santos. However, what if Daniel Santos makes it past round 1? What if Daniel Santos gets dropped, but recovers from that knockdown and actually makes it past the first 5 minutes? Daniel Santos has never been stopped. It's definitely possible he gets rocked early in this fight, but it's also possible he doesn't get stopped completely. What if Joe Sangyo can't put away Daniel Santos the same way he put away Jakub? If he doesn't get the finish, in that case, he would just have to stay strong mentally, keep the cardio in check, and continue to outclass Daniel Santos, continue to make him look like a walking punch bag. But that's so much easier said than done. Daniel Santos has amazing pressure. He mixes up the attack so well, sometimes leading with punches, sometimes leading with kicks. And then you add in Daniel Santos with the takedown. He's a very tough fighter, very scrappy, very well-rounded is Daniel Santos. He's got multiple ways to finish a fight, multiple ways to cause damage with the judges. We don't know too much about Joe Sangyo just yet. He wasn't tested in that UFC debut. He just instantly knocked out Saragi. So we didn't actually learn too much about Joe Sangyo. Whereas Daniel Santos, we know he's tough. We know he can recover from knockdowns. We know he can go the full 15 minutes. And we know he's very well rounded. He trains with Charles Oliveira. So just based on knowing more about Daniel Santos and not knowing enough about Joe Sangyo, I would actually have to lean towards the Brazilian, Daniel Santos. There's certainly a chance that the bad defense sees Daniel Santos get knocked out in round 1. But there's also a chance he makes it past round 1 and starts to break down Joe Sangyo. And, you know, everyone will say he's been fraud checked. Joe Sangyo gets fraud checked. That's what everyone's going to say if Joe Sangyo loses. But I don't think it's a case of being fraud checked. I just think it's going to be a case of losing. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But you do always learn. So instead of saying fraud checked, I'm going to say learning experience for Joe Sangyo. I'm going to predict Daniel Santos as the winner. Next matchup, we've got ferocious Farid Basharat taking on Chris El Guapo Gutierrez, taking place in the bantamweight division. Another great matchup on this card, and that's before we've even got to the main card. This is excellent matchmaking, and the betting line doesn't do this fight justice. You take a look at the betting line, you see Farid Basharat minus 400, minus 500. The casuals are going to think this is a mismatch. It's most certainly not. The betting line's kind of crazy because Chris Gutierrez is a really, really good bantamweight. So let's start the breakdown with the veteran fighter, the plus 300 underdog, Chris El Guapo Gutierrez. Chris is now 10 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. So this weekend, it will be his 15th Octagon appearance, an abundance of experience on the side of Chris Gutierrez. He got to the UFC back in 2018, debuting against Raoni Barcelos, which was a massive mismatch because Raoni Barcelos was in his young 30s back then, an absolute killer. So that was a very tough debut. And after losing to Raoni Barcelos, Chris fought against Ryan McDonald, and we truly got to see how good of a striker Chris Gutierrez really is. The calmness of that performance, the kicking ability, the calf kicking ability, just 10 out of 10. The speed, the footwork, the agility, the lightness, the trickiness. It was beautifully displayed by Chris Gutierrez. And after winning that fight, he continued to win. He won against De Freitas as a slight underdog. He won against Vince Morales at only minus 115. And he stopped Vince Morales with the calf kick. Do you know how good of a kicker you need to be to make someone quit with the calf kick? For years now, Chris Gutierrez has displayed a phenomenal kicking ability. He's an amazing striker, very tricky. But then you look at his fight against Cody Durden, and that shows us kind of the path to victory against Chris Gutierrez. You want to wrestle, and that's what Cody Durden done early in the fight. He gets a 10-8 in round 1 on all judges' scorecards. Now fast forward to the second loss in the career of Chris Gutierrez. He was outclassed by Pedro Munoz, the veteran. And in this fight, Pedro Munoz just didn't allow for Chris Gutierrez to fight at his pace. He was never allowed to control the fight. And I guess that's another way to win against Chris Gutierrez. If you're not wrestling, you need to control the pace on the feet. But outclassing Chris Gutierrez on the feet can be very difficult. Pedro actually got a knockdown in round 1. And that maybe put Gutierrez on autopilot for the rest of the fight, helping Pedro stay in control on the feet. In his loss against Song Yadong, again we see the wrestling game plan implemented against Chris Gutierrez. And if Song Yadong is choosing plan B, if Song Yadong is wrestling you to the canvas, that just shows you, man, how good of a striker on the feet Chris Gutierrez really is. because Song Yadong is one of the best bantamweights in the UFC. He's a phenomenal puncher, a phenomenal boxer. The last 2 fights of Chris Gutierrez are both winning performances. He won against Kwang Lee and John Castaneda, but in both of these fights, he lost rounds because he got stuck on the ground. He was stuck on the ground in round 1 for a little bit against Kwang Lee. He was also taken down in round 2 by Kwang Lee. The get-up game of Chris Gutierrez has never been strong, and his jiu-jitsu from his back is also very weak. So that's definitely the path of least resistance when fighting against someone like Chris Gutierrez. If you stay on the feet, you have to take part in a high-level striking chess match. If you get the takedown, you bring Chris Gutierrez away from that striking chess match, and that's definitely the right game plan. Now, the opponent, ferocious Farid Basharat, currently undefeated as a professional mixed martial artist, 4-0 inside the UFC, now getting a massive step up in competition. This isn't just a step up, it's a massive step up. If you look at the performances so far of Farid Basharat, it's fair to say he's a prospect, a serious bantamweight prospect. And I've asked myself quite a few times, who's the better Basharat brother? Is it Javid? Is it Farid? I think we've got the answer now, it's pretty clear. The better Basharat is Farid Basharat. So guys, just before we speak about the performances of Farid so far, one thing I really like to do when I'm watching tape is to see how the fight is evolving fight by fight. Do they look sharper fight by fight? Because when you have such a big step up in competition, you want to see the evolution. You need to see progression in the game of Farid Basharat. So looking at the debut of Farid Basharat against Damon Blackshear, which is certainly a tough debut. We know Damon Blackshear has a very dangerous submission game. He's got power in the hands, he's experienced, he can wrestle. So that's by no means a walk in the park for your debut. And Farid Basharat made it seem like it was a walk in the park on a sunny day. He dominated that fight in his debut. It was a very convincing performance by Farid Basharat. We saw multiple advantages displayed in that fight. Farid showed a superior cardio edge. He showed superior output, forward pressure, better footwork. He completely outclassed him on Blackshear. Then against Klidson Rodriguez, who's actually a pretty good kicker, like Chris Gutierrez, the first thing I noticed was Farid Basharat dives on a low kick of Klidson Rodriguez. So he's willing to dive on a low kick to get the fight to the ground, which is something he's potentially going to do against a phenomenal kicker that is Chris Gutierrez. Another thing I noticed in the fight against Klidson, also saw in my debut, Farid loves those single leg takedowns. He runs the pipe beautifully on the single leg, and if the opponent stays upright as he's running the pipe, he can just raise the single leg and trip with the other leg. He's very intelligent with his takedowns. He's got a mixed bag of takedowns. As for the ground control, it's very dominant. We see that against Klidson. He understands each position very well, full guard, half guard, always trying to get the knee on the belly or even knee on the bicep to lock down an arm and successfully land ground and pound. He's so well-rounded, he's so intelligent, is Farid Basharat. So what have we learned from the first 2 fights in the career of Farid Basharat? We've learned quite a lot. We've learned that he's got amazing cardio, excellent pressure, high fight IQ, multiple takedowns, excellent ground control, excellent grappling. He's got a decent get-up game. He knows how to shrimp the hips to create space so he can easily stand back up. And against Taylor Lapalus, again, we see those qualities on display by Farid, the cardio, the wrestling, the output. I even think the low kick of Farid Basharat was landing over and over against Taylor Lapalus. And I think for the most part, Taylor Lapalus done a very nice job on his defensive wrestling. He stopped a lot of those takedowns by Farid Basharat. But Taylor Lapalus has amazing defensive wrestling. So to see Farid Basharat still bring Taylor Lapalus to the ground, someone that has amazing defensive wrestling, it just goes to show how good of a wrestler Farid Basharat really is. And he doesn't use a lot of energy on the takedowns. He's not going to lift the opponent into the air and muscle the opponent to the ground. He's all about technical takedowns. So do I think he's ready for someone like Chris Gutierrez? I think so. I think so, guys. He's so well-rounded. His cardio's a weapon. His pressure's a weapon. His understanding of range is very good. And I actually think he's going to strike on the feet. I think he's going to go kick for kick with Chris Gutierrez. But then I think he's going to show us, look, I can take this fight to the ground anytime I choose to. And I think he's going to get multiple takedowns against the veteran Chris Gutierrez. So my prediction has to be the undefeated prospect, Farid Basharat. Next matchup, we've got Edmund the Golden Boy Shabazian taking on Andre Muniz. So my first prediction with this fight is fight doesn't go the distance. That would be the first thing I lean towards because both of these fighters have abysmal cardio. There's an old saying in the fight game, fatigue will make a coward out of anyone, and that's a fact. When you're tired in a fight, it's so difficult to stay in control, especially when your opponent isn't tired. And that's why you always hear the corners of both fighters saying, don't worry, he's tired too. He's tired too. You're not the only one tired. Because it's the mentality of the fighter that's tired that the coach is trying to motivate. There's also a saying in life, whether you think you can or can't, you're probably right. So if you believe your opponent is equally as tired as you, that's going to help you. That's going to help you in the fight. But if you think you're the only one tired in a fight, good luck. So Edmen Shahbazyan currently 8 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC, which isn't exactly a good UFC record, but he is a very dangerous puncher. He's got excellent timing, excellent technique. He can knock the opponent out with both punches and kicks. He's a violent KO puncher. But the problem with Edmen Shahbazyan, it's always been the awful cardio. His cardio is so bad. It's terrible. And once he gets tired, the fight's basically done. He's not the type of fighter that can fight through fatigue. Quite the opposite. He's the type of fighter that once he gets tired, he's going to quit. On the flip side, we see something quite similar with Andre Muniz. Once he slows down, he doesn't do well at controlling the fight. Once he gets tired, he's a sitting duck waiting to be knocked down, waiting to be sent to a galaxy far, far away. He's a phenomenal grappler though. He's a super high level black belt that can submit just about anyone. So if Muniz gets a takedown early, there's always a possibility that he's going to find that submission. And if the fight goes into round 2, he can still get the takedowns, but the takedowns become much weaker, which means there's a possibility that the opponent starts to stuff those takedowns, forcing Muniz to trade on the feet. And Andre Muniz doesn't have the best chin. He doesn't have the best offensive or defensive striking ability. He got badly dusted in his last fight against Ikram Eliskerov. So how does a matchup play out between Andre Muniz and Edmen Shahbazyan? Kinda how you'd expect. There's a very good chance Edmen finds a knockout. There's a very good chance that happens because his boxing is levels above Andre Muniz. But there's also a good chance if Edmen gets brought to the ground, he's going to get submitted. And if he doesn't get submitted, all that grappling, it's going to make him tired. So guys, like I said, my first prediction for this matchup is fight doesn't go the distance. And picking a side, I guess Edmen Shahbazyan, but I don't advise putting money on Edmen because his cardio is so bad. And once he gets tired, it's like, goodbye to your money. Goodbye to your money on that bet. So yeah, the first prediction would be fight doesn't go the distance. Next matchup, we've got a Tabor, the silent assassin Gautier, taking on Tristan Vines, taking place in the middleweight division. And there's no need to spend a whole lot of time breaking down this matchup. For anyone that's new to watching the UFC, or you've just started watching the UFC like a year ago, but you're not super knowledgeable just yet, if there's anything I want you to learn from this breakdown, it's this. A Tabor Gautier is just a mini version of Francis Ngannou. He's just a middleweight version of Francis Ngannou. Extremely powerful, devastating knockout power. He's just the next Francis Ngannou. And more than likely, his first loss will look something very similar to the first loss of Francis Ngannou. The first time Francis Ngannou lost, it was a wrestling masterclass by Stipe. And that's probably how a Tabor Gautier is going to lose his first matchup. If his opponent wants to win, they're going to need a wrestling game plan. If they don't have a wrestling game plan, they're going to need to be very experienced on the feet. They're going to need to be highly experienced in the striking realm. And they're also going to have an amazing chin, a granite chin, because the power of Gautier is phenomenal. Pure dustoration power. Nasty power, similar to Francis Ngannou. So who are we going to pick in this matchup? I've not seen the betting odds, but I'm assuming the betting odds are like, you know what? If I'm the bookie, I'm not even giving anyone odds on a Tabor Gautier. I'm just going to be like, you know what? You're not allowed to take money from me with this matchup because everyone's going to bet a Tabor Gautier with the KO TKO, potentially round 1, potentially round 2. If he makes it past round 2, then this dude's got to be Iron Man because the power of Gautier is phenomenal. So that's the pick. We're going to take a Tabor Gautier with a devastation in round 1 or potentially round 2. Next matchup, we've got Joe Bodybags Pyfer taking on Abus Magomedov, taking place in the middleweight division. So the first matchup on the main card, and what a matchup we've got here. Let's start the breakdown with the German. Let's speak about Abus Magomedov, and some people may argue that Abus Magomedov is Germany's #1 mixed martial artist right now. Abus Magomedov is now 4-2 inside the UFC, and I haven't been overly impressed with Magomedov so far, but I've been pretty spot on at predicting the matchups of Abus Magomedov. I've not gotten a fight wrong in the career of Abus just yet. It was a very easy prediction to make in his debut against Dustin Stoltzfus, because it's common knowledge that you never pick Dustin Stoltzfus in a fight against anyone. Even if he finds a shock win, that's fine. You never pick Dustin Stoltzfus. And my goodness, what a debut stoppage. What a dusteration. Magomedov got the fight done in literally no time. The fight starts and then the fight's just over. Pure dusteration. Then he gets put in a main event against Sean Strickland. And I remember saying on my breakdown, there's potential for Abus to get a round 1 stoppage. If he doesn't win in round 1, he probably wins that round. But after round 1, he's going to slow down under the pace and pressure of Sean Strickland. And that's exactly what happened. He started well in round 1, but past round 1, you're seeing the cardio is pretty weak on the side of Abus Magomedov. He's not suited to the 5 rounds. So after losing to Sean, there was no way I was going to pick Magomedov against Kyle Bahelio. And that was a pretty decent contest. That was a very decent fight. But after 10 minutes, we're seeing again Abus Magomedov starting to slow down. So after losing 2 fights in a row, the UFC give him a layup. They give him past prime Wally Alves, which is a very easy win. Then they give him the Hulk, Bruno Ferreira. And I was fairly confident that Magomedov was going to win that fight. And I actually put money on Magomedov. And I rewatched that fight earlier this week. And it was close. It was so close. It was a very decent fight, but Bruno Ferreira badly rocked him in round 2. And the fight's 1-1 going into the 3rd round. And at that point, you're kind of thinking the bad cardio of Magomedov is maybe the reason that he's not going to win. But then he gets a massive takedown and then another massive takedown. And he actually submits Bruno Ferreira right near the end of round 3. And then I picked him as a slight underdog against Michel Pereira, mainly because Michel Pereira's old. He uses so much energy. And I kind of felt that the weak cardio of Abus Magomedov wouldn't be such a problem against old man Pereira. Now the opponent, Joe Bodybags Pyfer, who's currently 5 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. And I've been pretty impressed with Joe Pyfer's work so far. He's a quality boxer. He doesn't have the highest output. His output's pretty low, but he's more quality over quantity is Joe Pyfer. And he's a quality wrestler, quality grappler. So it's fair to say he's very well rounded. In his debut, he absolutely detonated Alan Ambadovsky. That was a super easy debut for Joe Pyfer. Then he destroyed GM3. So at this point, we're starting to realise there's nasty power in the hands of Joe Pyfer. Then against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, he showcased a phenomenal ground game. So at this point, Joe Pyfer, 3-0 in the UFC. He's finished all 3 of the opponents. So the matchmakers decide, you know what? Let's put Joe Pyfer into a main event. And some people may say it was too soon. Some people may say he was dusting the opposition so nicely that the main event was deserved. But this was the first loss in the career of Joe Pyfer. He actually won the first 2 rounds against Jakub Manson. He started very well in that fight. But Jakub Manson won round 3, round 4, round 5. So if the matchup's 15 minutes, Joe Pyfer's still undefeated. But the fact it was 25 minutes, that's where he's lost the fight. And I kind of feel that he really slowed down past round 2. The output, the pressure, the experience of the Joker, Jakub Manson, it really started to show in that main event. So guys, it's fair to say that Abus Magomedov and Joe Pyfer aren't really 5-round fighters. They both have weak cardio. They both have amazing power, amazing technique, and they can both dominate early stages of the fight. And they're both also good at wrestling and grappling. So guys, in a way, they're kind of similar, but they both slow down. They both have weak cardio. Now, Joe Pyfer's currently on a 2-fight win streak. After losing his main event, he completely dusted Marc-Andre, and it was a 1st-round KO. Then he went against Kelvin Gastelum, an OG, a fighter that's in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not sure how KG took some of those punches in round 1. I'm really not sure. It must be that Mexican chin. So making a prediction between Abus Magomedov and Joe Pyfer, I have no idea. It's a beautifully put together matchup by the matchmakers. I don't know who's going to win. They're both so good. But I kind of feel that the kicks of Abus Magomedov, they're going to trouble Joe Pyfer. So he has to step forward, shut down the kicks of Abus Magomedov, start to rip the punches to the body, show that body bag style of Joe Pyfer. I do think he's a better puncher than Abus Magomedov, but man, this one's so tough. This one is so tough. I'm going to lean towards Joe Pyfer. I think it's going to be a split decision or a very, very close fight, but yeah, man, this one's tough. Next matchup, we've got Josh Emmett taking on Yusuf, the Moroccan Devil, Zalal, taking place in the featherweight division. So this matchup is a classic catch me if you can type of matchup. It's Bull versus Matador. Josh Emmett has unbelievable knockout power. We've seen that time and time again over the years. If Josh Emmett connects with those overhands and hooks, there's a very good chance the opponent goes night-night. Josh Emmett is currently 10 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. He's now 40 years old. And I'd also say Josh Emmett is a very one-dimensional fighter. At this stage of his career, he's not successfully wrestling against most of his opponents. He's not outpointing the opponent. He doesn't really offer much in his fights other than huge knockout power. So if you like Josh Emmett, you take a look at the KO TKO prop. Because Josh Emmett isn't trying to win rounds with the judges. He's just searching for a violent fight-ending overhand or hook. Now on the flip side, we've got a very tricky fighter. We've got Yusuf, the Moroccan Devil Zalal, who's now 7 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. Yusuf Zalal's looked so impressive since being back in the UFC. The footwork of Zalal, that's his main strength. It's the footwork. It's so difficult to get near Zalal. He's got that hit and don't get hit type of style. And his grappling is so decent. He submitted Jack Shaw, which is crazy to say because Jack Shaw's the Welsh Damian Maia. That beautiful, effortless footwork of Yusuf Zalal is going to be one of the main reasons why he wins against Josh Emmett, in my opinion. Guys, like I said, Josh Emmett, he's not looking to win rounds. He's not looking to wrestle the opponent. What he wants to do is find a violent, well-timed punch. But Yusuf Zalal, man, he's going to be on his bike the whole time. It's Bull versus Matador. And the Matador, in my opinion, is going to win. It's Team Moroccan Devil until the wheels fall off. And those wheels, they move beautifully. And some people might have forgot this, but Yusuf Zalal went into a fight with Ilia Topuria as the favourite. He was the favourite over the Matador. So that kind of shows you, man. The Moroccan Devil, the guy can play Matador too. He's slick on the feet. The footwork is beautiful. The speed, the technique, the grappling, the momentum, the confidence in the game of Yusuf Zalal. It's all very good. And Josh Emmett, he's got a puncher's chance. A very decent puncher, a very dangerous puncher is Josh Emmett. But Yusuf Zalal has more ways to win. And he's more well-rounded. So my prediction has to be Yusuf, the Moroccan Devil, Zalal. Next matchup, we've got Jiri Prochazka taking on Khalil Warhorse Rountree, taking place in the light heavyweight division. And my goodness, where do we even start with this matchup? Let's start by saying it's a violent fight. We've got a super violent fight here between Khalil Rountree and Jiri Prochazka. The former champion is Jiri Prochazka, a super unique fighter. There's nobody quite like Jiri Prochazka. So if you're trying to bring training partners into your camp that look similar to Jiri Prochazka, good luck, because there's nobody quite like Jiri. He's unique. And I think Jiri Prochazka has a double-edged sword type of style. There's so many positives to his style, but so many negatives at the same time. I think one of the main positives would be he's very unpredictable. He's not easy to read in a fight, so there's always going to be a chance that he catches you with a violent fight-ending sequence. But at the same time, he's super hittable. So I feel that unpredictability of Jiri Prochazka, it can work, but it can also backfire because he basically walks into the strike of the opponent. He's not a traditional striker. He's a one-of-a-kind type of striker, type of fighter. He got badly dusted by Alex Pereira twice. He won against Jamal Hill late in the fight by stopping the fight, but he also took a fair amount of damage against Jamal Hill. He won against Alexander Rakic, but the same thing, took a lot of damage in that first round. Guys, I hate to say this, but I kind of feel the wheels are starting to fall off with Jiri Prochazka. He's a super fun fighter. He really is, but I feel he's starting to take a lot of damage. On the flip side, we've got Khalil Rountree, now 10 wins, 6 losses, 1 no contest inside the UFC. He's mainly a Thai boxer. He's got super nasty power in both the hands and the kicks. He put on a masterclass over 25 minutes against Jamal Hill, where he took basically 0 damage. Typically, Khalil Rountree isn't a point fighter, but against Jamal Hill, he dominated every single second of that fight. He was never in trouble. It was a masterclass. Now, one thing both of these fighters have in common is they both got destroyed by former champion Alex Pereira, but both of these fighters have won since losing that fight. Jiri took a lot of damage against Jamal, whereas Khalil Rountree took 0 damage against Jamal. So I'm going to pick the underdog, Khalil Rountree, to win this fight. I think he could outclass Jiri Prochazka, but would I be surprised to be wrong? Absolutely not. Because like I say, Jiri Prochazka, he's so unique, he's so dangerous. But I think Khalil Rountree is more locked in, more focused. And if he doesn't use too much energy in round one, I think he can win every round of this fight. Potentially stop Jiri Prochazka with a nasty KO TKO. But I actually lean towards Khalil Rountree winning on my judges' scorecards. Seeing him point fight so well against Jamal Hill has made me think he can do that against Jiri Prochazka. So guys, let me know, do you think Khalil Rountree is a good underdog this weekend? Or should we not wager money on this fight? Should we just watch this fight? Because it's a violent one. It's a good one, man. But I do lean towards Khalil Rountree, the slight underdog. Next matchup, we've got Merab the Machine Dvalishvili taking on Cory Sandman Sandhagen, taking place in the bantamweight division for the bantamweight title. So let's start by saying Merab is clearly the greatest bantamweight fighter we've ever seen. Anyone disagreeing with that statement, I'm not sure how you can. In my opinion, Merab is the greatest bantamweight we've ever seen in the UFC. The last time Merab lost, it was 2018. Do you know how crazy it is to go 7 years without losing in the UFC? Some fighters can't go a whole year without losing. Merab hasn't lost in 7 years. That's unbelievable. That's insane. He's won 13 times in a row. He's got the best cardio in the UFC. Even better cardio than Fluffy Hernandez. He's super strong with his Sambo wrestling. He's an absolute machine. He's won 2 fights against Sean O'Malley, who's an amazing striker, one of the best strikers in the UFC. He's won against Umar Magomedov, who's an absolute beast. He dominated Jose Aldo, a legend of the sport. He dominated Peter Yan, a former champion, one of the best bantamweights we've ever seen. It's very clear that Merab Dvalishvili is the greatest UFC bantamweight of all time. And guess what? I'm picking against him. I'm picking against Merab. And for one reason and one reason only. I've seen Merab say that he's going to spend 90% of this fight on the feet. I've seen Merab say that. I've seen him say he's going to outstrike Cory Sandhagen. He's going to stay on the feet 90%. And if he does that, I'm telling you right now, he's a parlay buster. Now, some people might say Merab's not going to do that. He's not going to spend 90% of the fight on the feet. He's not actually going to do that. He's just selling the fight. He's just talking. He's not going to do that. But guys, remember Belal Muhammad earlier this year? He said, I'm going to show JDM Canelo hands. He said he's going to stand and outbox JDM. And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, okay, you're Belal Muhammad. You're not going to outbox JDM. He went in there and boxed and lost his title. So he followed exactly what he said he was going to do. Now, if Merab does the same thing, if Merab goes into this fight and actually thinks he's going to outstrike and stay on the feet with Cory Sandhagen, like I say, man, it's a parlay buster. But I will say, if he doesn't do that, if he follows the usual game plan, you know, ragdoll the opponent, if the opponent stands back up, take them back to the mat. If they stand back up again, take them back to the mat again. Strike a little bit, but we're going to wrestle too. If he does that, and it's a usual Merab performance, then Merab is going to win. I want to make that very clear. If Merab looks like Merab, he will win. And I think the same with Belal Muhammad against JDM. If Belal followed the usual Belal game plan, Belal would still be champion. I strongly believe that. But Belal went in there and tried to show him Canelo hands, right? So if Merab goes into this fight thinking, I'm going to outstrike Cory Sandhagen, I'm going to stay on the feet for 90% of this fight, if he does that, I'm telling you, man, you're going to be shocked. For all those parlays on Merab, you're going to be shocked. You're going to be saying, where's the wrestling? Where's the takedown? Why are you not ragdolling Cory? Why are you not bringing him to the canvas and smashing him on the ground? But if he does that, if he follows the usual Merab game plan, he will win. So it's going to come down to what it always comes down to. What's your game plan? If Merab follows the right game plan, he will win. But I'll take Merab's word. I'll take his word. He's saying he's going to stay on the feet. I'll take his word. So I'm going to pick Cory Sandhagen, and the plus 300, that might be worth a quarter unit. But I'm interested to see, is he actually going to stay on the feet? What do you guys think? Let me know. The main event, we've got Magomed Ankalaev taking on Alex Pereira, taking place in the light heavyweight division for the 205 title. So in the first fight, I put 500 on Magomed Ankalaev at plus 100. He's now over minus 200, which is a massive difference from the first betting line. And that first fight, in my opinion, was kind of disappointing for Alex Pereira. I think he clearly wins round one. Alex wins round one. But then I think for the next 20 minutes, his performance was so disappointing. You can't really score any other round for Alex Pereira. Now, some people will disagree. Some people will say there's round 3 for Alex Pereira. There's round 5. Some people will claim he deserves more than one round. but I think the only round that's very clear and obvious for Alex Pereira is round 1. And that's kind of why he's no longer champion. Magomed did more to win that fight. I'm kind of surprised he didn't bring Pereira to the ground. He did try, but he failed on those takedowns. And I know Magomed is primarily a striker. A lethal striker is Magomed Ankalaev, but he's super well rounded and can typically bring the opponent to the ground if he chooses to mix it up. So guys, in the rematch this weekend, I do want to see Magomed prove he can bring Alex to the ground, because if the fight stays on the feet for the whole 25 minutes, yes, Magomed did win that fight in the first fight, but that may not be the case this time round. If it stays on the feet, anytime you're on the feet with Alex, it's a dangerous game, man. It really is. Don't forget the low kick of Alex Pereira is super nasty, and that's a weapon that Magomed had serious trouble with against Jan Blachowicz. If Alex Pereira starts to smack that low kick against Magomed early in the fight, that could really help him dominate in the stand-up. That could really help him run away with this fight on the feet. And there's definitely a chance that either fighter can get a brutal KO at any moment in this fight. Alex Pereira has one of the most lethal left hooks. We know that Alex Pereira left hook is a thing of beauty, pure dustoration in the left hand of Alex Pereira. But there's also a chance that the super technical and super nasty striker Magomed Ankalaev can stop this fight at any moment. So don't be shocked if either of these fighters hit the canvas at any moment in this fight. They're amazing strikers and there could be a brutal KO at any moment. And I think the first fight was kind of boring, to be honest. It was a very slow-paced fight. Neither fighter really taking too many chances, too many risks on the feet. It was a slow-paced striking contest where Magomed Ankalaev would occasionally clinch up and get some control time against the fence. And that control time, it probably helped him win a couple rounds with the judges. And some people might say, well, you shouldn't be getting points for holding your opponent against the fence. But what did Alex do? You can't just say, well, Magomed's not doing anything. You have to ask yourself, what is Alex Pereira doing? You know what I'm saying? He didn't do enough. Round 1 was Alex Pereira's round. But past round 1, there was just not enough on the side of the champion. But guys, something tells me that the fight's not going to go the distance this time round. I could be wrong with that opinion. I could be wrong, but I just think Pereira's going to show more urgency this time round. And Magomed wants to probably win more decisively. So if both fighters bring more urgency to the octagon, there's certainly a chance the fight doesn't go to the judges' scorecards. And if I had to guess who's going to get the finish, I think it's going to be Magomed Ankalaev. I'm leaning towards and still in the rematch. I think Alex Pereira, he was an amazing champion, but he doesn't have more MMA experience than Magomed. And that kind of showed in the first fight. Gun to the head, I'm picking Ankalaev to get a nasty KO TKO in the second round. I know a lot of people are going to pick Alex Pereira, especially at plus 200, but I have to ride with Magomed again. It's MMA, not kickboxing, and Magomed Ankalaev is the better all-round MMA fighter. And that's why I think he's going to win the rematch. There's always going to be a group of people that dislike Magomed Ankalaev. There's always going to be a group of people that cheer against him when he fights. But just like Ilia Topuria, you have to turn the haters into fans. Just keep winning. Just keep performing and stay active. And eventually, the people that dislike Magomed Ankalaev, they will be fans. And I think winning in a rematch against a fan favourite, Alex Pereira, that's part of the process at turning the haters into fans. I'm already a massive fan of Magomed Ankalaev. I don't recall ever picking against Magomed. From day one, I've always been a fan of the technical striking beast that is Magomed Ankalaev. I'm also a fan of Alex Pereira. Who's not a fan of Alex Pereira? Everyone's a fan of Poatan. His run in the UFC was amazing. One of the most entertaining win streaks we've ever seen. He did lose to Adesanya, but still, his run in the UFC was amazing. But I just think it's Magomed's time. As always, my homies, hams that smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, get yourself a Money City membership over on the Patreon. It's super cheap because the Money City membership is where I post my personal bets. Be sure to join my Discord too. Alright, my homies, keep your eyes to the sky and never glued to your shoes. Enjoy the pay-per-view. It's a phenomenal card. Let's go.